evening. Welcome to Wendy's in downtown Coffeyville. It's the Red Raven Coaches Show here on US 98 and the Red Raven Sports Network. So happy you're with us. I'm Shane Neal, Coach Nick Dobler alongside as well. We'll be joined by a couple of his players as well. Coming up a little later in the show, and Coach, for the first time this year, not the kind of coaches show we want to have, of course, coming off of a tough loss against Garden City, a game that was really a great game the whole way, but not a game that you want to talk about it being a great game because your team came up short.
Yes, unfortunately we did not come out on top, and there's a lot of things that we shot ourselves in the foot on that didn't give us a chance to be on top, and so it was very frustrating.
Well, Coach, let's start off by talking about one of the positives of the game, and it was the tempo that your offense got off to. You got the ball. Garden's a very solid defense, as you know, in this conference, and you got the ball twice in the opening quarter, went down, scored 2 touchdowns, one by DeAndre Kelly and one as well through the air, and you had an early 14-3 lead, and you were really moving the ball well in the first half. Scored 3 touchdowns, had a safety as well on defense. But what were some of the adjustments that Garden made at halftime that really kind of threw some wrinkles into the offensive game plan that worked so well in the first 30 minutes?
Yeah, they did make as far as how they lined up, they did make an adjustment, but I think it was more us shooting ourselves in the foot again. I mean, we put the ball on the ground twice, lost one. Those first 2 drives that we came out after half, and that was nothing that they did. It was just us doing it to ourselves.
Absolutely. And Carson Crane, of course, got the start for this game against Garden, and I thought he looked good for the most part. And, of course, in overtime, he ended up exiting with a little bit of an injury. But overall, your assessment on how Carson looked in that game against Garden?
He went out and battled his tail off. I mean, that's him. We knew that's his competitor. He's going to do – you're going to have to pull him out of the game. It don't matter. He could be out there on crutches, whatever. He's going to be out there battling. So, bless his heart. You got to love that fighting him.
Well, and I think that's, you talked about it a little bit before the season opener, Coach, where you had mentioned, of course, this QB battle between Carson, between Joseph Vick, something that both of these guys have, and they have 2 very different play styles. Joseph Vick, more of kind of a traditional pocket passer, more of a pro-style quarterback. Carson, a little bit more of a dual-threat mobile guy. But something that they both possess is just, it seems like a cool kind of calm vibe to them, where it doesn't feel like they're panicking out on the field. Feels like they're able to just go through their progressions, make the smart play, more times than not, of course. Every college player has a mistake here and there, but go through their progressions, make the smart decision, and so far with what we've seen them on the field, they put the Ravens in position to win football games.
Yes, and that helps when you can have a rushing attack. It helps any quarterback, even the great ones. You need a rushing offense, and that's something that definitely helps them out, that we don't have to ask too much for them.
Stephen Robinson was unavailable against Garden, Coach. Of course, his status still kind of up in the air for Butler this weekend, but DeAndre Kelly had a pair of touchdowns. I thought he ran the ball hard. Trey Jones continues to just look really sharp early in the season, but when that running back room, of course, you have more than 3 guys in that room, but when that 3-headed monster goes down to 2, how does that change the approach, if at all? How did that change? Did that change anything that Coach Ortiz was calling, or was there a specific kind of snap division that you were trying to do? How did that factor in with Steven unavailable?
I think you're going to play with 2 backs in general. You really have it 2 deep at all positions. You're going to try to get the ones, that first guy that started the ball more. But with us having 3, I mean, if one goes down, we're still going to be perfectly fine. Like DeAndre really didn't rush much versus the Cisco game, unless he was asked upon because Steven did go down. So that is a blessing. If one gets banged up and the more we run the football, that we're still perfectly fine with the 2-man rotation. We don't have to put it all on one's shoulders.
Coach, you do, of course, we talked about, shooting yourselves in the foot. That's something that you mentioned early on here in the show. And for a team that, I felt like 95% of the game executed very well. I thought, you ran the ball for 220 yards. You had 161 passing yards. Still 10 penalties, but a lot less penalty yardage than we've seen in other games this year. But, of course, those 2 big turnovers really gave Garden life, of course, with 2 big scores off of those. And so what has been the focus in practice this week of, something that's been a focal point all season long of cutting down on turnovers, cutting down on penalties, because this team has proven through the first 3 weeks of the season, I think, that talent-wise, they can go out and beat anybody. And it's all about minimizing the opportunities, like you said, to beat yourselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we focused on to get better. I think that's every time you play football, especially early on, there's always going to be stuff you can improve on all three phases and stuff like that. And I will say the penalties, even though it was 10, the 4 delay games, 3 of them was me. We were making decisions to get the unit to punt back so we can punt it. So really it was only 6 penalties on the kids for 30 yards. And that's something I expressed to them that they did fix that, the penalties, which was big. That helped us. It's just the ball, offensively, ball's still on the ground, whether we lost it or not. We've put the ball on the ground, ball security. And then when you throw, 2 interceptions, let alone they're for pick sixes, you're probably not going to win the football game. So shooting ourselves in the foot, and they're, I don't know. You missed 2 field goals, too. There's 6 points off the board. If you look at it like that. With all that being said, we still have a chance to kick a game-winning field goal.
Yeah,
and if it goes through, I know, but it's not all, on Rowan. That's why we lost it. Everyone knowing that's what's nice about this team is they all stood up and took blame. It wasn't all on one person. So that was a good thing to have after a loss that, everybody, even coaches, we all took blame in it.
I'm glad you mentioned, of course, those delay of game penalties on the punts, because that slipped my mind. That did happen. And let's talk about a guy that I thought was really sharp for your team on Saturday, Brady Braun. I'll tell you what, he not only had some great punts, Coach, he brings some energy to that sideline. I mean, we saw him hitting the strut after the first one. We saw him he golfed after one of them. I mean, this guy, he has fun out there.
He's been waiting for this moment. Like we didn't really have to punt early. In some of these games, now we did have to punt, and he got to show off his leg, which we already knew that he could do it.
Yeah, the McAfee strut was something we were really enjoying up in the press box, let me tell you.
I honestly didn't know much about it. That's awesome that, you guys, that he did put on a little show.
Absolutely.
After, having a little energy.
No doubt about it. Coach, something that I wanted to touch on before we move, of course, to this weekend's matchup with the Butler Grizzlies, something that Matt Jordan and I noticed after the game that I thought was something that was really cool to see, really impressive. You mentioned, of course, the missed field goal by Rowan, and like you said, of course, plenty of opportunities for all 3 phases of this football team to win the game. It's not all on Rowan. It's and your team immediately, like you said, expressed that look, this is on all of us. This is on all 85 guys on this roster. But something that we saw after the game, as you can imagine, Rowan was pretty upset with the outcome of the game, and we saw Jaden Shepard down there on the field, just having words with him, pulling him aside. I don't know what was said from up on the 3rd floor, of course, but that's a leader right there, a guy that, is unavailable right now, but is still down on the field, still offering support and encouragement where he can. And for a moment like that, where a freshman, has his first kind of big negative in playing college football, for a guy like Jaden to be there, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and let's not overlook the fact that we were missing Jaden on the field that game, for our first loss. He's the heartbeat for us. He's the soul. I mean, he's been that guy since all offseason that has stepped up into the vocal part, and been there. We have a lot of great leaders, though, too. It's just he is kind of that vocal guy because that's him, and he's been there. And so I think it was a little bit missed. Not going to overlook that at all, but that's typical Jaden, though. That's why. Him grabbing people, building them up.
And, that's a great point that you made. I think that, all in all, when you look at it, Coach, I think there have been linebackers, there have been defensive backs that have stepped up without Jaden on the field these last game and a half or so. And we have 2 of those guys here sitting behind us that are about to be on the show. But, like you said, I mean, this team does have depth. This team does have the talent to still be a competitive, strong defense without Jaden on the field. But Jaden, just almost like you said, is kind of that nucleus that everyone kind of plays around. And when you don't have that nucleus, it's kind of a bunch of, individual talented players instead of that connected group.
Coaches can only do so much. That's where it's so important for players to step up when they see stuff not going the right direction or to build each other up. Like it means more coming from each other, from somebody else that's out on the field with, because like I tell them all the time, and I told them literally after practice today, like, we're done playing. We aren't out there. Coaches don't make the plays. We are not out there on the field. We are not out there in crucial situations. We're not right next to you when it's 4th and 1 or overtime. Like, it's you guys. You guys are out there together. So when the players can do that, that's when you got a really good team.
Coach, last thing before we take our first break of the show and get your couple of your guys here on the program. Something that we had talked about in the post-game show was that's the kind of game where it can beat up a team emotionally, having that game so close, so many opportunities to win, and that just it comes up short on your home field. A lot of emotion, a lot of emotion that went out with that loss. But it's also the kind of game that can build character and build a team that's resilient, build a team that bounces back. So what has been the intensity, I guess, that you're attacking this week with to make sure that this group, which I don't think they will, doesn't let that game build into this week and instead says, let's get back out there on the field and let's handle Butler?
I don't know where to go with this because Tuesday I thought we did that, and then today, just coming out of practice, there was nothing. We just accepted going out there, going through emotions. And that was very frustrating. I let them know it. I let them know that it was very unacceptable and it's not very good, and us coaches aren't very happy. So I don't know. You talk about like an emotional game whether it was a win or loss, when an emotional game comes down to the wire, whether you win or lose, it definitely can affect you that next week. Even if you win, going through it emotionally, it puts a drain on you. I do know. I mean, you look up after Hutch, Iowa Western, both those guys are in dogfights early on. And it takes them the fourth quarter to finally get going, even though they should both be the better teams than who they played. And that's like that at all levels. So I don't know. I hope we still got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before we play. But, we had a good practice Tuesday responding, and then today it was kind of like, So I don't know where to go and answer with that.
And of course you hope that the tradition and the history of Butler Coffeeville maybe brings out a little extra juice as well. But
I'm sure on Saturday when the ball kicks off, there will be a lot of emotions. It ain't no doubt.
No doubt about it. Red Raven Coaches Show here live from Wendy's. I got my strawberry lemonade. I got my chicken wrap here sitting next to me. Coach, why don't you let us know who's going to be hopping on the show coming up next?
We got DB Kyler Christmas and linebacker Lonnie Burt.
Great stuff. We got a couple defenders that are asked to do a whole lot on this defense, and they'll be joining the show here coming up in 2 minutes on the Red Raven Coaches Show. We'll be back in 2 here on US 98 and the Red Raven Sports Network. You got it. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Coaches Show here on US 98 and the Red Raven Sports Network. I'm Shane Neal, and we are here at Wendy's. Appreciate Wendy's for having us, of course, each and every Wednesday night. I got a grilled chicken wrap this week. I got an order of fries and a strawberry lemonade. I'm going to go to town on that wrap as soon as we're done here. I promise you that. But we got linebacker Lonnie Burt and defensive back Kyler Christmas getting up to join us here on the show. Thank you guys for being here. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. Kyler, how you doing?
Pretty good, and you?
Good. And, of course, we will try our best to not touch too much on that Garden game and move on to Butler as soon as we possibly can. But, guys, I thought, for the most part, I'll start with you, Kyler, because something I noticed early is their starting quarterback. Of course, they used two different guys in that game. But they were doing a whole lot of hitch routes, a lot of short those short routes to get those 5-6 yard gains. And it seemed like you and the other DBs, after that first drive, really adjusted to that well. And even if the catch was made, there was almost an immediate tackle. So what was going through you and the other DBs' heads, and what were you communicating out on the field that it seemed like you recognized that passing attack pretty quickly?
Yeah, so the first drive, I was just being a little conservative, and then
once I realized, like, you're not going to run with that. Like, they took 3 the first drive. Once we get in the red zone, you got to score. The big plays, the hitches, that's going to be, because the yardage is not going to be as much as more.
Well, and something, every DB kind of approaches it a little bit different, but something that I've heard from a lot of different corners and safeties is keep your guy in front of you. And I'm sure you being a corner and you playing, back a few yards off of him, if he stays in front of you, there's no problem. You can go up, you can tackle him. You're worried about him getting behind you.
Yes, I just make sure I made the tackle, and that's about it.
Absolutely. And there was one I remember that I don't know. You can tell us here on the show if you got your fingertip on it, but it was a screen pass. You read it perfectly. You came through. You kind of dove in there, and it was dropped by the receiver. I'm not sure if you got a finger on it, but
I didn't.
You did?
I was reading it all week. I really wanted to pick 6, but I just made the play and I messed it up. So
we said even if you didn't touch it, you definitely impacted the receiver, obviously.
Yes,
Lonnie, let's talk about with you, of course, and being a linebacker on this team, being kind of that nucleus of the defense, like we talked about with Coach Dobor and Jaden not out there right now. So let's talk a little bit about, obviously you play with a returner on this team in Kamari Johnson. What has it been like playing with KJ and learning from him and being on the field with him? Because both of you have really, the front seven as a whole, but both of you have been really important players in slowing down the run, which is something the Ravens have done really well this year.
Yeah, it's been awesome, playing with these older guys, especially Jaden. They're great leaders, and I'm just, trying to learn as much as I can from them. And then, obviously, with Coach Eldridge, he played linebacker at high level, so just really getting knowledge from him and just improving each week has helped us as a whole a ton.
Well, something I'll ask both of you your thoughts on this. We talked about, of course, with both Fred Giles and DJ Jackson about Coach Eldridge and his aggressiveness on defense, where he has not been afraid to tell us that he trusts you guys, and he's not going to be afraid to send them boys on third down, and he's not going to be afraid to play press man and send a blitz. And so both of you guys, of course, different roles when that package comes around, where Kyler, they're trusting you in one-on-one situations, and Lonnie, they might be trusting you to man coverage a tight end, or maybe man coverage the running back, or go in on a blitz. But what does it mean to you guys as football players where you have a defensive coordinator that's just like, we got good players, let's go send them?
Yeah, it's definitely real fun. And I like that he trusts us. Just gotta, keep gaining that trust. But yeah, when those moments come, it's the time to make a big play, so he can keep calling them and just have fun out there.
Absolutely.
We just game plan all week. So like Tuesday and Thursday, we game plan, make sure we run it right, and then on Saturdays, he just had to trust in us. And actually, this Saturday was probably one of the best Saturdays. We showed that he could trust us in them situations.
Absolutely. Kyler, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. We touched on it a little bit with Coach, but something that, a game like Saturday can have is an emotional impact on a team, obviously, whether that be, I think there's 2 different ways, obviously, it can go. It can be a game where it kind of stacks, and obviously this season could go not the way we want it to go, or I think this group could really, take that as a learning experience and gain a lot of resilience from it, gain a lot of character from it, go back out there and, attack and be like, we don't want to feel like that again. So what have you and the other sophomores and the other returners on this team been doing this week in practice and, maybe even off the field, just in conversations with your teammates about, look, Saturday's in the past. We obviously can't change it. Let's go attack Butler on Saturday.
Yeah, just knowing that how much talent we got and how much connection we have. We've been working since January, and most of us are still here. So we know we have the chemistry, and the loss, we just use it as motivation to make sure we don't let it happen again.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely a difference from last year.
Absolutely. And I think, something that and I'm not saying that last year's team couldn't compete with anybody from a talent perspective, but I think something that we've learned in these first 3 games with you guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is, obviously you'd love to be 3-0 sitting here, but I think we've seen against Cisco, against Garden City, that this team can go out there against any team in the nation. I don't care if they have number 1 next to their name. I don't care what they have next to their name. This team can go out there and they can compete with anybody.
We can.
Lonnie, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Of course, Butler coming up this weekend, so this is going to be your first experience with Butler Coffeyville.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard from some of the guys the rivalry and the history behind this
Definitely.
one. But obviously, always a fun game. Butler, a very talented team as always. Great defense, great special teams, a talented quarterback that can make plays. So what's the key for not just you, but for other guys all across this team on all 3 sides of the ball, to obviously getting fired up for a game? This is a big rivalry game. You should be fired up for it. But at the same time, staying controlled, staying composed, and executing your assignment on Saturday.
Yeah, we just got to go out there with confidence, keep studying our plays, keep watching film, and then I think the main thing is, we just got to be all on the same page, people aligning correctly and off each other, and just really can rely on your teammates to do their assignments, and we should be able to play our game if that happens.
Linebacker Lonnie Burt, defensive back Kyler Christmas, good enough to join us, guys. Appreciate it. Last thing I have for you both. This Butler offense, they've had some highs, they've had some lows this year. They started kind of a disappointing week one for their standards on the offensive side of the ball. But the last 2 weeks they've been very strong offensively. So what you've seen in film so far, I know you still have 2-3 days to prep, but what you've seen so far from them, what are some areas of their offense that really stick out to you, and what are you going to be zeroing in on for Saturday?
So definitely we always respect our opponent, but we're like the run game is pretty good, the pass game is pretty good. You feel me? So we just got to make sure we keep our offense on the field and defense stays off the field, and we're definitely doing our job.
Absolutely. Lonnie, anything you've seen so far on this Butler team that maybe is a little different from what Garden did, or something that's a little unique to what you've seen so far this year?
They got a couple good linemen. They got a pretty, big running back. And then I think the running back, he actually came from Coffeyville last year. And then, but in terms of just like different things, and you just got to be ready. It's another ranked team. They're ranked 14th in the nation. So, just getting prepared to go out to battle again.
No doubt about it. Great stuff from two very important pieces of the Red Raven defense. Good enough to be joined tonight by Kyler Christmas and Lonnie Burt. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And best of luck on Saturday against the Grizzlies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's take another 2-minute break. We'll be joined by Coach Dober to talk about the Butler game coming up right after this on US 98 and the Red Raven Sports Network. Thank you both. That was great. Coaches Show live from Wendy's, and we're hanging out here at Wendy's, and appreciate Coach Dober for hanging out with us here every Wednesday night at 7. And Coach, you guys both did great again. I think we have a perfect success rate of players on the show this year, just knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, when they're player of the weeks on the field, they usually, are pretty good kids.
That's right. Well, you got to be able to communicate out there on the field to be players of the week. So they're pretty good at communicating their thoughts.
Yes, they're smart people. We got a smart bunch of group and guys, stuff like that. They handle their business well.
Well, Coach, I'll kind of frame the similar question to you that we just asked Kyler and Lonnie, but Butler coming up on Saturday. Of course, a big rival for this program, not just this year, but in the history of Jayhawk football. You're going to their house this time around, and what is it about, getting back on track with a team like Butler that can maybe, I think I think you could spin it in a positive way. You know, necessarily, I guess I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. If you go off of a loss to play another team, like we talked about, you're kind of worried about, you know, your guys bouncing back. But I think for an opponent like Butler that has so much history with the school and so many great battles, I think maybe it could almost kind of do the firing up your guys for you in a way.
Yeah, as long as they understand the rivalry. You know, that's the thing. Is, you know, we get guys that they don't really know much about the Jayhawk, you know, and all of a sudden they're here and they're like, huh, your biggest rival is Butler? I'm like, yeah, if you go back and look at the tradition and what it is in this conference, I mean, the biggest, if you think of any rivalry game, I mean, it's Butler-Coffeyville.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and so it's just educating them and letting them know. I mean, every program, you know, and regardless, you want to win against anybody, and no matter what you do after a loss, you want to go beat the next opponent. But let alone it is, you know, if you understand the tradition and the rivalry, no better way to go play next week and get that sour taste in your mouth and go beat Butler.
Well, Coach, without giving too much into the schematics of how you're approaching Saturday night, of course, what do you see anything from Butler on offensively, defensively, whatever, that's a little bit different from the team you've seen this year? Do they do anything that's kind of unique to the three teams you've seen?
Yeah, they're going to be different, but they are, you know, one thing is they have continuity. I mean, the head coach has been there for a while now on the offensive side. He does have a new O-line coach, but you can definitely, the receivers coach was there last year, pass game coordinator, offensive coordinator now. Defensively, they're pretty much the same three coaches that have been running D-line, DBs, and DC. So for me, since I've been here and I've played against them, you know, there's definitely similarity of who they are. So for me, it's familiar, but obviously we got new coaches here too. Players are new, so that's always the change. And they're learning who these guys are. So, but they're a very, 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 very good team. You know, they've won some games, and there's a reason why, offensive and defensively, and they got some talent out on their side, on both sides, all three phases too.
Absolutely, they do. Coach, something that really stands out to me about this Grizzlies team, they still run the ball just about as much as any team in the Jayhawk. Not quite as much as maybe Garden did. They're about 150 yards a game or so on the ground, but still a very solid running team that you have to respect in that point of their offense. But they have 9 passing touchdowns in 3 games looks like 38 total 38 total completions. So this is kind of a big play, hit you quickly offense where they, you know, about 25% of their completions on the year have been touchdown passes. So I know you got a veteran group of DBs and you got guys that you trust out there in coverage. But what do you have to do to try and slow down that? It seems like kind of rapid fire passing attack.
Yeah, they're definitely. It's a different style offense. I mean, yes, Garden City, they're just trying to run the football, all that stuff. And they were trying to throw the load, but they made a little quarterback switch and went to a little athlete. But, you know, Butler plays 2 quarterbacks. That's what's interesting. They got 2 quarterbacks that both can run their offense and throw the ball. They definitely got some receivers out there, too. So the pass game is definitely going to be more of an emphasis this week to slow down their offense.
Absolutely. And, Coach, you hinted at it, but the Butler Grizzlies always have a strong defense, especially that front line. Ever since I've been in this conference, the Butler defensive line is always one of the best in the Jayhawk Conference. Of course, your team loves to run the football. That's a Coffeyville thing. Butler's played Coffeyville enough to know that Coffeyville loves to run the football. So what's the key for the big boys up front, of course, on the line, on both sides of the ball, winning in the trenches? Because obviously when Butler and Coffeyville play, it's always a physical battle, and winning in the trenches usually can win a game in this matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be hard fought. Yes, they got some D linemen out there that's pretty good. Their defense is definitely pretty good, just like normal. And that's the thing is, like I tell everybody, you know, that I educate them is, you know, last 4 years we played them, I mean, even though we've been on top a little bit more than they have, it's been a battle. It's always come down to the last drive. You know, it literally has. So there's no ifs, ands, buts. It's going to be a close battle game, low scoring in general. In a battle all the way down to the wire, who has the ball last. That's what it's always come down to. So
I don't see this year's Butler-Coffeyville game being 40 and raining like it was last year. So.
Yeah, that does always throw a wrinkle in.
Barring some sudden change to the weather here coming up the next couple of days. But, Coach, last thing I have for you, appreciate your time as always each and every Wednesday. But something that Kyler mentioned that I thought was very interesting was I asked him something similar that we talked to you about in the first segment of the show. And I said, what have you and the other returners on this team said in practice? What have you said off the field in just conversations with your guys? As Kyler walks up, I appreciate him being on the show, of course. But he said, you know, this Raven team, they're just so connected. They're so I guess connected together is the word that or the phrase that he kind of used. And he said that it feels different than last year because it just feels like these guys have that common understanding between all the guys on the team that they got each other's back, that they're going to bounce back, that the talent on this team is going to prove itself on the field. So when you hear him say something like that as a leader of this team, no question, a leader on this team, just that almost veteran confidence that he has, that he trusts everybody on that defense, he trusts everybody on that football team, that they know when Saturday night rolls around, it's time to go back to work, it's time to handle business, it's time to beat Butler. It has to make you feel pretty good as a head coach.
Yes, this group has been through a lot. That's why I was educating them a little bit. Sometimes you got to remember where we started. This season wasn't, what we do on Saturday. Sometimes it started back in January, and that's what we have a lot of guys that were part of that group starting in January, back in the weight room when school started back up. From the very beginning of off season, they've been training together and all that, and that's what builds chemistry, is being around each other and going to work. So, and that's one thing, like I said from the beginning, this group went to work. So when you can do it next to somebody and see how hard somebody else is working, you might not be, like best friends hanging out all the time, but when you're around each other on the business side, on the football side, and you see that, that's what builds, them tight together, that they can trust each other because they know what he's been through, what he's about.
And that's a common theme you see across all good teams, across all sports, Coach. You can't fake that love for each other. You can't fake. You don't have to be best friends off the court, like you said, off the field, like you said. But guys and girls, athletes that love to go out there and just play for the teammates around them, play for the coaches around them. That's what builds special groups, and that's not an issue with this team. Obviously you need talent to win big games, but having that love for each other and having that group of guys that would do anything for each other, that goes a long way.
Yes, very excited.
We're very excited for Butler and Coffeyville coming up on Saturday night in El Dorado. Appreciate Lonnie Burt and Kyler Christmas for being on the show tonight, Coach. As always, appreciate you being on the show as well. And here's hoping next Wednesday night we're talking about this team getting back on track with a big-time rivalry win on the road.
I mean, this Butler week one, we've got to make sure I don't drop off and think Wendy's. And even though I don't have my lemonade yet,
it's coming.
It is coming, the Frosty and all that good stuff, and a good burger, and maybe some chicken nuggets and all that stuff. So again, very awesome being here. Can't express enough about that. But it is Butler week, so can't express enough that it's going to be exciting on Saturday.
No doubt about it. Can't miss a matchup between these two teams. We appreciate, of course, Scott back in the studio. We appreciate Andrew and Amber for being here tonight, helping us out with the RSN feed. And we appreciate Coach, as always, for being here. I'm Shane Neal saying so long from Wendy's in downtown Coffeyville. We'll be back at it next Wednesday night at 7. Red Ravens take on Butler. Saturday night in El Dorado. Coverage begins at 6:30. Kickoff at 7 right here on US 98. Let's get back to the music. We'll talk to you next time.